We are joined now by Sam McKewon of the Omaha World Herald. What's up, Sam?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Not too much, just sifting through a rather busy weekend in July. I mean, you got to enjoy these when you randomly have a July weekend where there's actually stuff going on.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Sure. Enjoy is one way to put it.
Oh, man.
Is it disrupting your vacation or your last gasp of
week.
There's no slow weeks anymore, Sam. There's no more.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, this week is. I mean, MLB is what it is, and then you got the Open on Thursday, which I always love. But this is the last slow week in Nebraskaville. Once you get to Big Ten Media Days, which Nebraska's on Wednesday, but the thing starts on Tuesday, everything just feels really fast, and it goes really fast. You don't feel like you have enough time to write everything, and so they'll come back in Big Ten Media Days. I think they'll kind of report, then they'll have a camp, and then I think they'll kind of start camp. But our first media availability with them will probably be like the 29th or the 30th. I can't remember what day, but everything goes real fast then. I mean, August will fly by, and season will be here before you know it. So, yeah, people need to enjoy this last quiet week because it's going to get really loud, and this is going to be a really intense football season. Like, this is an important, pivotal year for Nebraska football. So, enjoy this last week of quiet and calm.
Sam, I don't like that you're putting out that on a Monday. Saying enjoy this last quiet week. That feels like it's a jinx waiting to happen.
I don't think there's going to be anything. We'll see. I think you might see Nebraska announce like the retitles of their coaches because obviously they hired Jamar Mosby from Kansas City area, and he had a different title than I think he probably would have had previously. I think you're going to see some different titles for some of the analysts that are on the staff now that they can be assistants. There's really no reason to call them analysts, but I don't know if that'll happen this week or next. At some point, you'll get that alternate uniform. I don't know when that's going to come, but that's become anticlimactic around here. They don't try too hard with the alternate uniforms. They try to make them, sort of classy. So we're no longer in the 2012, 2013 superhero era of Adidas alternates.
I still like the black alternate, Sam. I'm still waiting for them to bring those back.
They might. Yeah, that was in 2013?
I think so. So. Well, it's a good look,
Quietly, I didn't know there was the alternates that came out in like 2018, the Frost era, that were the black shirt ones.
Yeah.
I'm not. Christian Jones was wearing a black shirt jersey whenever he visited campus and released some photos online. I didn't know if that one was still in rotation, but apparently they still got it somewhere in the closet.
Yeah. When did they wear the black shirt ones?
It was Indiana 2019.
2019 Indiana. Yeah, they've never won in the black, I don't think. So they lost in 2013 to UCLA and completely collapsed in that game.
Yep.
And then I feel like they wore them, 2015 Northwestern? I can't remember. And then in 2018, Frost's first year, they wore those weird throwbacks that they played against Illinois.
With the Band-Aid colored pants, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't like
and
those.
Then 2019 was black. There weren't any in 2020 that I recall. And 21 was one of my favorites, the NU helmet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they've had some pretty nice ones over the years, but they've gone very classic in recent years. Last year's was the blue number or whatever, the blue outline. It was pretty classy. Nothing out over the top. I don't expect anything over the top any from here on forward.
And Sam, before we get to important football topics such as artificial turf versus natural grass and maybe Mosey as well, if it was up to you, we've seen Nebraska wear the standard uniforms either with the white on the white or the red on the red. I think the red on the red's only happened once in history. If you had the choice between the two, some people have called the whites the surrender whites. The all reds are very bright. I'm not sure I quite like them. If you had the choice between the two, which would you have Nebraska which would you rather have Nebraska wear, given that Nebraska, it'd be the easiest alternate to pull off, just changing the color of the pants?
The all white, easy.
Okay.
They haven't necessarily won a ton of games in those, but They did beat, that they wore all whites, I believe, for Tommy Fraser's first start in '92. Yeah, the all whites. I think they look great. I think I think players would like them. They look fast, and I've always been a big fan of that look. Kind of reminds me, even though they're different, obviously, colors, of the old Minnesota Vikings uniforms, when they would wear the all whites.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s and the 90s. That was, I was not a Vikings fan, but that was one of my favorite uniforms in the NFL, when they would go with the all whites, or when the Cleveland Browns go with the all white, which they don't do very often. My wife and I watch their games, and they don't do it very often. So, I love the all white look. All red, no. No, never again. And I remember the game. It was 86 Oklahoma. It looked neat for that game, and Nebraska played its heart out that game. They should have won the game. But I don't like the color. I don't like that sort of color rush thing that they do in the NFL, where it's all one color. And Texas Tech pulls it off with their black uniforms sometimes. Texas Tech always looks pretty good, but I don't think Nebraska's ever been able to pull off that look with much success. And I don't think most teams can, to be honest with you.
And what the thing is with as much as we see the recruits wearing those in some of their pictures, the red on red, I wouldn't be surprised to see Nebraska pull it out once. Maybe not this year, but in the years to come. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. And I'm probably using recruiting pictures way too importantly here. I pulled it out twice now. But with as much as recruits wear those red on reds, I wouldn't be surprised to see the team pull it out just once, because eventually the team's got to sit back and say, hey, we wore these for our recruiting photos. When can we actually wear them in a game?
Right. That's fair. I think, my son's a little young. He's 11. But red is kind of his color, and it's the color of a lot of his friends. They like red. And so we've gotten our son a lot of red stuff. So I think that color happens to be somewhat popular. The other colors that are popular are related to soccer and what soccer teams you root for. So, I think red is kind of back in. I think for a while there, whatever color palette Oregon was putting out was popular, but I think Oregon, that is sort of passé. Like we're not in that era anymore where what Oregon does, everybody's looking at. I think Oregon's a little garish and probably should gear back its look too.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. You mentioned earlier in passing Jamar Mosby as far as him being brought on to staff. Speaking of recruiting, he's obviously got a kid that's a high-level receiver, but how much do you think that factored into the decision to bring him on, or was it more the recruiting of the area he's from around the Kansas City area?
I think it's probably the latter, and I think he's also probably a good coach.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of high school coaches are developmental coaches. They understand how to make players better to get them from one spot to the other, because there are very few high school football players that are anywhere near a finished product. And so if you're looking for guys to come in and develop a player, a high school coach is a great way to go. Tom Osborne built, his infamous staff, or his famous staff, wasn't infamous. He built his famous staff off of high school guys. Milt Teneper, Frank Solich, these were high school coaches. And they came to this level, and they were better than everybody at coaching their positions. I mean, Milt Teneper is a legend. And he was a legend first in high school. Dan Young, the late Dan Young, the same thing. So, there's nothing wrong with doing that. And a lot of times you can build great staffs that way. Matt Rule had Joey McGuire, who's now the head coach at Texas Tech. So, I think it has something to do with that. Now, the recruiting in Kansas City, I do think you have to have relationships in that area in order to get in there. Kansas City and St. Louis have kind of gone back and forth as to which the better city is. Right now, Kansas City's way out in front. This particular cycle and some other cycles, they're way out in front. And that may stay that way for a while. You just never really know. You go back 7 years and St. Louis was out in front. And by that, I mean St. Louis, East St. Louis, all, both states. Right now, Kansas City is well out in front. Williams Ranieri was from there. He went to Missouri. They've got great players there again. So Nebraska obviously wants to get into that. a number of pro players that Nebraska's enjoyed, especially on the defensive line, have come from the Kansas City area. Malik Collins, the Davis twins. It's a good place to get players from.
Now, Sam, do we know what kind of role Jamar Mosby is going to have in his day-to-day operations around Nebraska, what that job title actually entails?
I don't think we know for sure. I mean, I think he'll probably work wherever they want him to, and he'll be something that an analyst used to be, but he'll now be sort of an assistant. They've got a number of really good analysts on that team who are probably going to become like assistants. Guys that Tony White brought over from Syracuse. It's really, really good coaches. And as Nebraska, maybe loses some of their current assistant coaches to other jobs, Rob Dvorak, that's coaching the NFL tomorrow, really good technician. And I've always just said that I thought Terrence Knight eventually would matriculate back to the NFL because he played in it, and that makes sense to me one day. They have guys there that could take over because they have some really, really good minds in there. So I don't know what Mosby's going to do, but I'm sure they'll figure it out.
Sam, I'm curious, have you gotten any sense at all of how many of these types of staff positions that Nebraska might be looking at adding? I know you mentioned converting a bunch of the current analysts to these new, whatever their new titles are going to be, senior assistant or whatever. Have you gotten any sense of how big Nebraska wants this staff to be?
Are you talking the coaching staff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they have already created a nice support staff behind the full-time assistants, and now they'll move some of those guys up. After that, I don't know how much larger it needs to be. I think there does come a point where it would be too large, where you have a lot of guys, but they don't have enough to do. And so I think they've already kind of created, a system of support that allows some sort of natural transition of titles over. Of course, you'll always take an elite mind if you can find it, somebody who wants to get back in the game, somebody who's willing to come in. I'm thinking, the Boston Celtics added Jeff Van Gundy in the offseason, and he probably has something to do with them winning an NBA title. And so, you're always looking for stuff like that. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I know nothing. But, Rule's old defensive coordinator retired. He didn't want to do that anymore. I think he was ready to, kind of retire. But that guy would be a helpful mind in the room if he ever wanted to get back into the game. And
is that Phil Snow?
So, yeah. There's just guys around that I think would be helpful. To be honest with you, I think on defense they're in really, really good shape. You have a really good defensive coordinator. Matt Rule is a defensive mind. He understands the game from both sides, but I think defensively he really gets it. And I think maybe adding an offensive person who can come in and be sort of a Matt Lubick type. Originally, people maybe not in this. Lubick was the guy that kind of wanted to be an analyst. And some of the other guys kind of fell through, and then Lubick became the OC, and that wasn't necessarily what he wanted to do, but he came back to do it. But Lubick helped them, to get more efficient and moving the football in the 1 year the 2 years he was there. So I don't know, something in there where you can maybe get a mind on the staff, somebody who's not going to recruit, but can help you get your offense better.
Well, Sam, and it's Sam McKewon with us here from the Omaha World Herald. Sam, if we go back about 6 months, it felt like Nebraska had that guy in Dana Holgorsen, and for some reason or another that fell through. I'm not sure if you have any insight there, but it did feel like for a little bit this offseason, Nebraska could have had that guy that probably wasn't going to recruit, that was just going to be an offensive mind in the office to be able to help out with schemes and with the coaching staff. And we didn't know how much on-field coaching he was going to be doing, but that felt like it was going to happen for a little bit, and then it just kind of never actually ended up happening.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, isn't it? I just don't think it coalesced or came together, and that happens sometimes. He would have been an interesting addition. He certainly understands the quarterback play, and how to get offense and points. One of the underrated stories, Elijah, of this year is going to be how the offense changes and tweaks. We don't talk a ton about it because we're very focused on culture, because that's where Rule wants the reporters focused. But if you go back and watch last season, there was a lot of things they didn't do that 2020 modern offenses do. Throw the ball out, smoke screens, whatever you want to call them. There's ways to to take advantage of a zone defense or things like that. Just get the ball out of the quarterback's hand. And the first thing we saw in the spring game is that they got back to that. And Glenn Thomas, I thought, brought that. If you watch the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously Thomas wasn't the offensive coordinator. Canada was. Some of that stuff is not really applicable to Nebraska because Canada is a very specific kind of OC. But Glenn Thomas will bring some concepts to the program that will help, and especially as it relates to throwing the football. I think Marcus Satterfield has a lot of those things in his system, but you can tell what Marcus Satterfield likes. He likes to put 4 different kinds of positions on the field, get everybody kind of moving, play action pass, get a quarterback on the move. But you need all the parts in order to do that. He had that at South Carolina. The 49ers have that. I think Nebraska's still developing that. So you've got to be able to just drop back, have a concept, and your quarterback needs to make a completion, as opposed to it being, a highly structured play action pass that gets you 37 yards. Just got to be able to drop back and get your quarterback at some early solutions that move the football and gain him confidence. And I think that's an area where you're going to see them grow very quickly this season. Or they're going to have to. Because they're not just going to be able, and he knows this, Matt Rule knows this, you can't just run for 230 yards a game if you can't throw for 150. You've got to be able to throw for 200.
Sam,
and he knows that.
I'm curious, how much of us not focusing on kind of some of these specifics about the offense that you're talking about? I mean, obviously, Matt Rule is, playing a little misdirection with us the way you described a little bit, and I don't think it's nefarious. I just think he wants us to focus on those things. But how much it also is just there's a certain understanding that last year wasn't what they wanted it to look like either, so we don't spend a ton of time maybe breaking down this is what it looked like last year versus what it might look like this year, because none of us really feel like we actually know what it was supposed to look like last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I will say that they went in with their eyes wide open. They took Jeff Sims. I think they knew that Jeff wasn't, although, apparently he's battling for the Arizona State job, which is, that's an Oregon spread system. So, I wish him the best. And it's hard to say, guys. When Jeff dropped back to pass in the first 2 games of the season, and they did have some dropbacks. You go back and watch the Minnesota game. One of the challenges that Nebraska had is they didn't have a lot of size at receiver once Xavier quit and once IPC got hurt. And Billy Kemp, good slot player, it doesn't work in the Big Ten. A 5'9" slot guy, you better be Wan'Dale Robinson if you're going to make that work. And Billy's a nice player, but he's not Wan'Dale. He doesn't have Wan'Dale's quickness and some of the other things. And so they did not have options over the middle, and Fedoni was just coming off injury. And so they didn't have a lot going for him early in the season. And then by the time that Fedoni had, some sea legs under him, and some of those young receivers had some sea legs too, it was late in the year. And, Harburg was really banged up. People probably don't appreciate how much he played through. And then Chubba's going in there, and Chubba can do some nice things, but Chubba just never had a great shake at Nebraska. He'd always come in late in the season, and it was cold and crappy weather, and he just never had a great break here. I do think he can be a good quarterback somewhere else. So, yeah, it didn't look like it was supposed to look last year. I think they feel much better with Dylan Raiola in that spot. maybe even Danny Kaelin if they had to play him. And I think they think Harburg's going to be better, but I also think the supporting cast is going to be much better. So, again, just drop back and be able to throw the football is something that Nebraska will get better at.
Sam McKewon with us here from the Omaha World Herald. Make sure if you haven't already to give him a follow on Twitter at SWMcKewonOWH. And Sam, with the last couple minutes we have left here, we've made it 1 hour and 20 minutes into this show without talking about natural grass at Memorial Stadium. I don't know how we've done it.
Yeah.
I want to get your thoughts on that flip. Feels like something that Matt Rule has wanted since day one whenever he stepped on campus. It finally sounds like it's going to be coming at some point, maybe as early as 2026. I want to get your thoughts on what natural grass at Memorial Stadium will look like and what kind of difference you think it makes, if any.
So many years ago when Nebraska put in its latest iteration of field turf, I can't remember what year that was. I remember we got a tour of it, and they might even had an iteration after that, but it was the turf. And I remember asking an NU official, "Have you guys ever thought about putting grass in here?" And he looked at me and he goes, "No." The way he said no. No. Nope. We hadn't thought of that. And I didn't say anything else. I was like, okay, somebody's annoyed. But the reality is Iowa State, Michigan State, Penn State, they all have grass. And it's been a while since I've been to Iowa State. But Iowa State's got a pretty turf, and Penn State's got nice turf. And Michigan State's is okay. Purdue's is a little screwed up because they use the turf. They use a Bermuda grass that they use on the golf course about 500 yards from the stadium. And I don't know. It doesn't always work. It dies, and then it's a little spongy, and Nebraska won't probably be using that. They'll probably be using bluegrass or whatever they have. But, I think it's a great idea. It does cost more, obviously, to take out the turf they have now and put in new turf. Maintenance costs. That's not going to be easy. The heated field thing. I know the Packers do that. I don't know if the Chiefs do or not. The Chiefs have a horrible grass field, so it can kind of go both ways. But one thing that's true about the Chiefs, and you could go down there and ask them, is that Clark Hunt likes making money, and so he puts all kinds of stuff in there. They got the Copa event. Taylor Swift's in there. They had Kenny Chesney a couple weeks ago, so they don't give a crap, and they win a lot of football games. So Kansas City's surface has not hurt Kansas City. They've been able to win a lot of games on it, but it's not a very good surface. And the Steelers have a terrible surface, and they're at Heinz Field, but they have a bunch of high school games on their field. So right, like late in the season, that thing it's like a minefield. And so Nebraska's going to have to figure those things out. Iowa State doesn't have that. Penn State doesn't have that. Michigan State doesn't have that. Nebraska's going to have to navigate the high school championships, and then they're going to have to chew on whether they want to put a bunch more events in the stadium. For example, can you really have a volleyball day on August 31st if you're coming back home to play, 5 days later and that thing's getting chewed up to heck? I just don't know. And so those are things they'll have to chew on. But a beautiful grass surface, there's nothing better. And if they're willing to put the effort into making it nice and taking care of it, it's a terrific surface. Prettiest grass field I've ever seen, by the way, is the one in Ireland that they played on over there. And they didn't even let anybody walk on it for many days. The football teams didn't even really do anything. They went and practiced somewhere else right outside the stadium. But, that surface was gorgeous. It was, so I've seen the peak. I mean, that was as good of a grass field as anybody's ever going to see. So I think Nebraska can duplicate that, and I think it's a good idea.
Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. Sam, we appreciate the time as always, and enjoy your last quiet week.
All right, take care.